Hello there, my name is Jacob Kaufman. You may know me from my YouTube channel over at Nerd on the Street. But whether you come from there or you're just browsing Craigslist or eBay, hello. This is a video describing the Mac Pro that I have up for sale. So I bought this Mac Pro to be a web server a couple of winters ago. I got it on eBay from a seller in New York, and since then I have upgraded it several times. I am selling it because even though I've upgraded it and it's actually a pretty decent machine, I don't have it used for a second desktop right now. I've got my own desktop computer that I use for day-to-day things, and I really would like to purchase a laptop for college. So this thing's just kind of sitting here, and I thought, it's actually a decent computer, I might as well let somebody else use it, rather than just keeping it sitting in my basement. So this is a Mac Pro Model 1,1. It is the original 2006 version. It is a quad-core model. It has 2 dual-core processors in it for a total of 4 cores. It is not the baseline model. It's actually a slightly higher than baseline model. It's got 3 GHz processors in it. It still has the default 4 GB of RAM. I've added an SSD, so right now it's got a 120 GB Samsung SSD in it, and that SSD has the system installed on it, and then it also has a 500 GB Western Digital green hard drive, and that hard drive is for user files in the configuration that it's set up right now. Obviously, if you buy this, then you can configure the hard drives however you want, or you can add more. I have also upgraded the video card. This has an ATI Radeon 4870 with 1 GB of VRAM. It's a dual slot card, and we can actually turn this around for you so you can see that. As you can see here, we've got 2 DVI ports and 1 S-Video port. And whoever buys this, I will actually throw in one of these DVI to VGA adapters because I've actually very rarely used DVI displays with this Mac. Since it's an older machine, I tend to use it with older monitors, so I end up connecting it to VGA monitors a lot. So you will get this if you purchase this Mac, this adapter. If you're looking at this, you're probably already familiar with the layout of the Mac Pro's I/O, but as you can see, we've got 3 USB ports on the back. All of them are USB 2.0. We have a FireWire 400 and a FireWire 800 port. There's optical audio and analog audio, and 2 gigabit Ethernet ports. This is very useful for when I don't have enough ports on my router. I actually sometimes just use this to share internet with a 5th computer to plug in. Of course, you could also use this computer as your router if you want to do that kind of thing, or if you're using this as a web server, you can connect this directly to your modem and connect your router to the other port. There's lots of different uses for having 2 Ethernet ports, so like I said, if you're looking at this, you probably are already aware of that. Of course, at the top we've got our power plug there, and of course this comes with the original Mac Pro power plug, or what I assume is the original Mac Pro power plug. Obviously a fan grill here, and then of course here we have our latch to open up the side of this. So if we turn this around the other way, I'll actually open it up and show you inside. So we'll just pop this open. And I absolutely love the Mac Pro for how easy it is to open and close. I'm actually going to set this down, but this is an extremely easy computer to open, absolutely no screws, you just have to unlatch it. And actually, as you can see here, you can lock this computer case by putting this little L bracket down, and now when you close that latch, if you can see this, there's actually a hole here you can put a padlock through. If you want to do that. It's a little bracket that sticks out of the computer when you fold that down. And that way you can keep people who you don't want in your computer from opening up your computer and taking hard drives and things like that. If you're dealing with super secure or super private information, then that might be nice for you. So you can see we've got 3 of the hard drive bays have their original slots in them. Let me open this back up here. Obviously 2 of them are completely empty. This slot here has the 500 GB Western Digital green hard drive in it. And then here in the first slot, the reason why I took the bracket out of there is because the bracket does not work with SSDs unless you have an SSD to hard drive mounting adapter, which I don't. Right now the SSD is plugged in there, and I've actually got a little keychain sitting under the SSD supporting it so that it's not putting stress on the motherboard or anything. That probably sounds a little shifty, but I've been using it for years, and I periodically open it up and check on it just to make sure that there's no stress on the port in there and the SSD is not hanging or anything. So yeah, even though that's not an official way to mount SSDs, it's been working very well for me, and it'll work very well for you too if you want to keep that SSD in there. Down here you can see that ATI Radeon graphics card. That card is absolutely awesome. It's a really big card, it is a little bit older. I'm not going to take that out to show it to you right now. If you want to see it in greater detail, I actually made a video about putting that into this computer, And if you go and watch that, you'll see it was actually very difficult to plug that card into the motherboard. So, word of warning to anyone looking into buying this or any Mac Pro, it can be quite difficult to get cards, especially bigger cards like this, to fit into this case properly and to plug into the motherboard. But yeah, that is in there right now. It's screwed in with both screws and the power's plugged in, obviously. Up at the top here, this is where your optical drives are. And there's one optical drive in this computer, as we can see if we undo this. Just one optical drive. It's just a standard old optical drive. I assume that this is the same drive that originally shipped with this computer in 2006 because there's absolutely nothing special about it. I will say sometimes it's difficult to get DVDs to boot on this computer in this drive. CDs always boot just fine, and USB drives always boot just fine. But just a word of warning, if you're trying to get a DVD to boot, that can be a little touchy with this specific drive, so you might either consider putting another drive in this machine if you're doing that, or just instead of booting from a DVD, you can always boot from a USB drive. And that's only something you would do once, you know, that's not something you're doing every day, so it's not that big of a deal. We're going to go ahead and put that back in here. There. There's fans behind these plastic covers, and those don't come out very easily, so I'm not going to take those out for you. Obviously, this is where the power supply is, and then down here at the bottom, these are the RAM boards. And this computer actually has dedicated boards to put your RAM in. As you can see here, this is the configuration we have right now. The top board has two 2GB slots in it, as you can see there. And this is kind of expensive RAM, even though it's older. That's the reason I haven't upgraded the RAM yet. But if you do want to upgrade the RAM, there are 6 open slots on this, and you can upgrade this up to like 64 gigs total if you want to. So yeah, it's super easy to get in there. You just saw yourself. You don't need any tools or anything. This just pops in and out. That's awesome. So we will slide that back in, and you just kind of give it a push. And then the bottom board, I'll let you see here. Like I said, none of the slots on the bottom board are empty there. So 4 free slots here, plus the 2 free slots up here. You got 6 free slots off the bat to work with if you do want to buy more RAM for this Mac. So we will just pop that back in there. And now I'm going to put the side on here. When you first get this, it might take you a little while to figure out how to easily put the side on. It took me a little while. The first few months that I had this, every time I took the side off, it was really a hassle getting it back on. But once you get the feeling of it, you really just have to do it a few times and figure out how it slides into the bottom. But yeah, when I was looking for Macs to buy, I was actually looking specifically for ones that still looked nice. So as you can see, the exterior of this is very nice. The side panel is just about flush with the rest of the case, which was really important for me. You know, a lot of the old Mac Pros you see for sale online are dented up all over the place and scuffed up like crazy. There are a few scuffs on this. There's a small scuff up here you can probably see, and then, like I said, on the other side, I showed this earlier. This side's actually very nice. The middle of this machine is completely just clean. Just on the sides here on the corners, you can see some black scuff marks. I don't know how this would get scuffed up like that. But yeah, it was like that when I got it, so not much I can do for you there. But the shape of this is still just like when it was brand new. And yeah, for the most part, the paint's actually doing fine on it, or, you know, the appearance is doing fine. So the last side that I have not shown you yet is the front. And I'll just do that. So if you take a picture of this with a normal camera, just with the flash off, this is what you're going to see. If you take a picture of this with the flash on your camera, then you actually get a much better look at the fans inside of these grills. There are a few fans lined up here, pushing air directly into the hard drive bays and the processor. Here you can see the power button right there, as well as a headphone jack, 2 USB 2.0 ports, and once again a FireWire 400 and a FireWire 800 port. Up here you can see the bottom CD slot. The bottom optical drive slot is the one that has the optical drive in it. The top slot currently does not have a slot in it, but you can pop one in there if you want. I just showed you, where it was in here. So if you're not familiar with these systems, then yeah, the optical drives run on IDE. So just grab yourself an old IDE hard drive, and as long as the door can fit through this drop-down door here, then yeah, you can just throw that into this Mac Pro. Now the only other thing I have to say about this machine is if you do follow my YouTube channel, or if you go and take a look at my YouTube channel, you'll see that I'm a big Linux fan. Right now, this Mac actually has Linux on it. not Mac OS. I will install Mac OS for you if you want Mac OS on this computer. I will be more than happy to install Mac OS. 10.7 Lion was the newest version that this Mac supported. I was actually getting tired of using outdated software since the newest version of Mac OS that this Mac supports is not the newest version of Mac OS available. Apple dropped support for the 2006 and 2007 Mac Pros quite a while ago. That is why I installed Linux on it. Right now this has Kubuntu 15.10 on it, and the reason why I'm telling you that is because it's actually kind of difficult to get Linux running on these properly. And as of right now, with the Linux installation that's on there, you actually have to go through a little bit of a hassle to turn the computer on. It's really not that bad if you're a Linux user. You've probably dealt with things like this before. This flash drive has a bootloader on it. So there's no bootloader installed to the hard drives in this computer. I tried for a long time to get the Linux bootloaders installed on the hard drives, and that just never worked. So this flash drive has a bootloader installed. Right now, as of this moment, if you want me to leave Linux on this computer for you, I would be more than happy to do that because I support people using Linux. So if you get this computer and you want me to leave Linux on it, when you boot it up, you have to have this key plugged into the back of this computer, just into any of the USB ports, and I'll just plug it into one right there. It can be plugged into any USB port on the entire system, and you just have to have this flash drive plugged in, and then once the computer turns on, it's going to boot from this flash drive into a grub terminal, and there are 3 commands you have to run to start up the system. Like I said, if you're a Linux person, then running 3 commands really isn't that bad. It is the same commands every single time. I have them memorized. All you have to do is set which hard drive is the root of your system, and then set the Linux kernel, and then set one other file, and then just type boot. So I guess that's 4 commands. But if you buy this computer, please let me know whether you want me to remove Linux from it and install macOS for you, and I will install macOS version 10.7 Lion. Or let me know if you want me to leave Linux on here, and if you want me to leave Linux on here, then I will include this flash drive with your purchase, and I will also give you a piece of paper with those commands typed out. Like I said, even if you've never used the command line before, it's very easy to boot into Linux on this. I can give you a piece of paper with those 4 commands on it, and you can just type them in letter for letter into the keyboard, and it will boot into Linux. So yeah, if you're a Linux fan, or if you're an open source fan, or if you were planning on using this for more modern tasks, if you want more up-to-date software on this, that's why I installed Linux, is because Linux on this thing is more up-to-date than the most recent version of macOS that this supports. So if you want me to leave Linux on it, let me know, and I'll throw in this flash drive with your purchase. If you don't want me to leave Linux on it, if you're not a Linux user, if you want to use this as a Mac, that's perfectly fine. Let me express that again. If you do not want Linux on this, I will install macOS for you. I just wanted to mention the fact Linux is on it right now, on the off chance that whoever's buying this wants to use Linux on this. If you don't want Linux on this, I can wipe it off of there, I can put macOS back on there, and then you can just completely disregard everything I said about booting. When macOS is on this thing, it boots up like normal. You just hit the power button and it starts all the way up, and it's completely fine. At this point, I'm going to cut over to the screen that I've got set up with this computer, and I'll actually show you it working, because that might be a little nice for you to see. Alright, so like I said here, I'm just going to turn the computer on for you so that you can see that it's working. Currently it is down there, and I do have it connected to 2 monitors right now. I've got it connected to the TV sitting on top of the Mac Pro right there, as well as the CRT, so I will hit the power button over here. And you'll hear the bong in just a moment. So yeah, even with Linux, it still has that. As you'll see, the display is going to turn on, and we're going to get that grub terminal that I talked about. Like I said, whoever's buying this computer, I'm going to keep Linux on this until I actually sell it, because I prefer to use Linux. If you buy this computer, please let me know whether you want me to leave Linux on here, or if you want me to put macOS back on here. So as of right now, with Linux on this thing, here's what you need to do to boot it. Just type in set root equals hd11, and then Linux/VM Linux root equals /dev/sda1, and then initrd/initrd.img. And some of the stuff even auto-completes, so you don't have to type the whole thing. Alright, and then you just type boot, and then it starts up Linux. So like I said, that is really as easy as it is to boot Linux on this. That's how easy it is. If you don't want to have to do that, then I will install macOS on this for you if you purchase it. If you order this computer, just let me know that if you want macOS installed on this, and I will be happy to put macOS back on here for you. But just because it might still be a while until anyone takes up this offer because it is an older computer, I am keeping Linux on it as long as it is mine. So I'm just going to log into my sister's account here just for demonstration purposes so I can show you around. That will start up there. Currently, like I said, I have KDE on here. It's Kubuntu 15.04. And you'll see the screen does flicker. This is not just CRT stuff going on. Sometimes we get artifacts with the CRT and the camera, but this is actually, it was flickering a moment ago. Now it's stopped flickering. During boot, there are some graphical issues because it's an older graphics card, but now that it's done booting, everything looks perfectly fine. So you can see over there to the side, the TV is on, and that's a separate screen as well. So here we can go and we can open up a system profiler of sorts called HardInfo, and this is what I like to use. It, like I said, is basically the Linux version of the Mac OS system profiler, and it just opened up on the other screen there. Let me drag it over here. So, summary of this computer. Processors, you can see here we've got, let me zoom in there so that you can see this for yourself. You know, instead of doing that, how about I'll move this over here, and I'll point it down to the TV, and then you guys can see it there. So here in the system profiler, you can see this computer does have, like I said, a quad core. That's 2 dual core processors for a total of 4 cores. They're Intel Xeon processors, and they both run at 3 gigahertz, which is higher than the baseline for this model. It's got 4 gigs of RAM, which I'm not actually sure if that's baseline or not, but it's enough for doing simple things, especially enough for like a web server or a home media server if you're using this for that sort of thing. If you're going to be doing things like photo or video editing on this, you may want to upgrade the RAM in the future, but that's the only thing that's not upgraded at this point. If we head on over here, we can go to the PCI devices, and we can confirm that we are using an ATI Radeon 4870 graphics card, and we can confirm that it does have... Now the memory right here says 256 megabytes. Like I said, this graphics card is actually not made to work with Linux, it's made to work with Mac OS. But if you look up the model number of the graphics card, it is a 1 gigabyte card. There's 1 gigabyte of VRAM inside of there. So yeah, aside from that, this is just the computer running. That was just to sort of show you this is indeed the Mac Pro showing up on these screens, and the Mac Pro does have the hardware that I said it has. Oh, I guess I can show you the storage devices. We got the Sony DVD player, and it says DVD player here. Like I said, it's never had any problem with CDs, but sometimes playing DVDs, it's a little touchy. Down here you can see we've got that Samsung SSD. It's an 830 SSD. 830 is the model number, and it is 120 gigabytes of storage, and then we've got the Western Digital green hard drive. It's the power efficient one. I know it's not super high performance, but it's made for long-term storage, which is an okay thing to have in this, especially if you're using it as a server. And then at the bottom here we've got the flash drive that's plugged in there. Like I said, you'll get this flash drive if you purchase this computer with Linux. I'm not going to throw in the flash drive if you want me to install macOS on it, because then I will be using the flash drive elsewhere. But right now, the flash drive is necessary to boot the computer. So if you want me to keep Linux on here for you, then yeah, I'll throw in that flash drive for sure. So that's everything that we can see in here. I mean, you can see some basic benchmarks here, but really, this computer is way more powerful than any of the baseline benchmarks installed in here. So we're not going to get a lot of useful information out of these benchmarks. But yeah, it's a fully functional computer. It accesses the internet just fine, and I've done video editing on this specific installation. That's why, you know, I installed Linux on here. I've got my video editor, Kdenlive, on here, so I've edited some videos for my various channels on this computer. I can affirm that that works pretty well. And definitely this works great as a server. Like I said, this was hosting my website, nerdonthestreet.com, for years. This specific Mac Pro that you are watching run right now, This ran my website for years. It was always extremely stable, extremely dependable, as I should say. Actually quite independent from the rest of my computers. And at this point, I haven't been running nerdonthestreet.com on this anymore because I've moved up to professional hosting for nerdonthestreet.com. But I am still running a home-owned cloud server on this. So yeah, if you're looking for something like a home server for file syncing and for, you know, maybe a home email server, or even if you're looking to set up a web server, this is a really great computer. It's a really great option. And yeah, $800 might sound like a little bit on the high side for this sort of machine, but like I said, pretty much every aspect of this machine has been upgraded. It's got that upgraded graphics card, so you can use it for video editing if you want to. It's got that SSD put in it, and that SSD makes a big difference. That SSD makes it a lot faster than it was when I first got it. And at this point, you know, these old Mac Pros, this is not what new Mac Pros look like anymore. New Mac Pros are a cylinder, but this old design a lot of people really liked. It's a tower design, the tried and true computer tower. A lot of people really like this design, and at this point it's something of a collector's item. You know, if you're a fan of Apple products, or just if you're a fan of really solid builds, this thing is just solid aluminum. It's a really solid computer, really solid build quality in the case, so yeah, if you're looking for something extremely stable basically, it's not the newest processor, it's not the newest graphics card, but this thing is a workstation class computer, and it really shows, because it's extremely stable for whatever you want to use it for. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, send me an email. Other than that, I hope that somebody out there will find this of interest. I was extremely excited to purchase it a few years ago, and it's really interesting that just in a few years my interests have flipped this much, and I'm not so interested into Macs anymore, as is evident by the fact that macOS is no longer installed on here. But yeah, if you're interested in this computer, like I said, send me an email, or if you have any questions. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. My name is Jacob Kaufman with nerdonthestreet.com. Goodbye.